You are watching Issues at Hand on Church of Uganda Family TV. My name is Bruno Tumuheire. As always, thank you for joining us. Now, Issues at Hand is proudly brought to you by Protea Hotel Entebbe. The number is there. Make your reservation and booking today if you want to have the best in terms of hotel amenities, especially for a hotel that is neighboring the lake. Wonderful view there. You want to go and spend some time there, not just alone, but with your family. Then for those of you who are corporates, you can go and have conferences at many of the amazing halls on display at Protea Hotel Entebbe. Once again, the number is on your screen. Make your reservation and booking today. Now, on Issues at Hand today, we're having a very, very interesting discussion, something that for me, I will admit is close to my heart because I am very keen about what I eat, and this discussion pertains a lot to what we eat, and that is a discussion on genetically modified organisms. They have been trying to break their way into our market, and we're going to find out why. We're going to find out why this is becoming a big issue, why it's very, very pivotal that we have this discussion, because it has its dangers and risks that we need to be conversant about. So that's the discussion we're having today. We are talking about the effects of genetically modified organisms. Now, with me to have this discussion this morning is Mr. David Kabanda, who is the Executive Director for the Center for Food and Adequate Living Rights. Very wonderful. Then making a triumphant return, I have Mrs. Agnes Kirabo, who is the Executive Director of Food Rights Alliance. You are very welcome to Issues at Hand.
Thank you, Bruno. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Not yet. No, it's still February, so it's very fine to say Happy New Year.
Happy New Year and good morning, viewers. Thank you for making the right choice, but I think the best greetings that I can bring is praise the Lord Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior.
Amen. Amen. Indeed, we praise Him. And we'd like to welcome you, Mr. David.
Thank you, Bruno. I'm very excited to join the discussion this morning. Good morning to everyone that is watching us this morning. And I'm also happy to join into the discussion and make a contribution to this topic that we are handling, the genetically modified organisms. Yes.
Well, let's get right into it. So, hitting the nail on the head, what are genetically modified organisms? Who'd like to go first?
Let me give
ladies first.
In case of no danger, when we talk about genetically modified organisms, we are referring to organisms whose DNA has been manipulated for one reason or the other. And particularly for this show, we are going to look at genetically modified organisms in the food. Food that has been genetically, and that's why we're talking about genetic manipulation. The science, using their sophisticated science, can look at a trait in a certain crop or animal, and they need it in another crop or animal, and then go deep into its DNA and only pick that particular trait and then bring it to the host of their desire to manipulate its DNA. For instance, people who wish to see that tomatoes have a long shelf life, they thought that they looked at the creatures around and realized that a frog lives under both warm and cold conditions, and then they studied the DNA of the frog and only picked that particular trait and added to the tomato. That's the extreme. But mainly so far what we are seeing here in the trials conducted in Uganda is they again look at a particular trait, let's say resistant to a particular disease, and then bring that chromosome into the DNA of the host crop. So what happens is that the host crop or plant develops that particular trait or that they have added in its DNA. So we are talking about DNA manipulation. I'm not a scientist. I need to put an underscore to that. But science is not for the scientist, especially if it crosses lines to come to our life and to come to our food system. Now, what happens if the DNA has been manipulated? God, in his own wisdom, during the time of creation, created everything good, and that's what Genesis teaches me. And so that everything God had made with his own hands is really, really good. When God makes me in my own trait, tall and brown, there is the way within the only wisdom of our Creator balances me up. That even when I grow going up, I do not actually fall when I'm walking. I'm fully balanced. And that when I'm brown and he's dark, he's balanced and I'm also well balanced. So this is what happens if the DNA is manipulated. When they pull out a particular trait and enhance it higher, then that lowers the other traits. And that is why you find that GMOs in terms of crops are, let's say, chemical intensive. Because if they enhance the yielding, they make it more susceptible to pests and diseases. You understand? So you have to add in the chemical, because the DNA is no longer balancing and the crop cannot strive on its own. And this is where the actual dangers come from. If you go and manipulate the DNA of anything, then one, I have told you, you lower the ability of that crop to thrive and fight on its own, so you have to add the chemical. And if you intensify the yield, and you're going to find that other traits become lower, so you have to intensify water or fertilizer. It cannot go alone. And therefore, one, the crop itself becomes troubled. And particularly because we do not have a lot of time, for instance, I have read that if you manipulate the DNA of maize is one of the crops that have intensively been manipulated in this GMO science. When you manipulate that particular crop, the whole maize, the leaf, the stalk, the grain, the cob, and everything carries that trait. This is a little different. For instance, if you think that you are going to, let's say, spray a normal maize crop against a particular pesticide, you will only spray against that particular pesticide, but the grain will not be carrying the trait. So the whole crop becomes manipulated, and meaning that the whole system becomes manipulated. I have been as basic as I could, but the issue is, I see that you're brown and I'm brown and he's dark. We should not wait to have brown or dark children. They pick my brown DNA chromosome and then add it to him. Definitely the genes have to crash. They have to crash. They react. They respond to something foreign that has come into them. So in other countries, we have seen people that are crossing genes from animal to crop, from reptiles to crop, from crop to animals. You know, and you wonder, why would somebody labor to add rice into a banana? Why would somebody labor to add the pepper, hot pepper, into a banana? God in his own wisdom created the pepper and it was good. Created the banana and it was good. Created the rice and it was good. Why heavens on earth are we pointing our fingers into the mighty eye of the Creator? Why?
Indeed, and it has very costly effects like we are going to go through. But Mr. David, do you have anything to add to that? And secondly, what is the driving force behind this use of GMOs, especially particularly in East Africa and in Uganda?
Thank you so much, Bruno. My sister Agnes sums it well. I only need to add that when they are picking genes to introduce it in other organisms, it is not only natural or biological genes. They can even do artificial, those lab synthetics. So you wake up eating, Ugandans at least have heard about plastic rice, those things. But you can wake up, you're eating something, but what is in there is not natural. Because Agnes is talking about picking a gene from a frog and you introduce it maybe to a plant. To some extent, you'd say maybe that is a natural gene, but these scientists also have the capacity to come up with a synthetic gene and introduce it in your crop, and then you eat it. It is dangerous. We do not hide, we are not fearful when we are talking about it. And the people who are engineering it, these things also know that what they are doing is wrong. It's wrong, it's immoral, it's actually illegal, and it is dangerous, not only to humans, to the environment where we live, and they know. This is why many countries in Europe, in US, there is fear. Don't stop this.
Well, you might say that, but proponents of the use of genetically modified organisms will say it's a way of handling the problem of food insecurity. You have crops that can yield faster, you don't have to wait for a season, and that would make, especially in Africa where we have issues of drought or famine. So what would you say to that? Because that's their argument.
They are liars and they know it that they are lying. Genetically modified foods or organisms or plants are not a magic bullet for farming. We have enough food, by the way.
To feed everyone.
We actually grow much more food than what we need. Why some people are hungry is not because we do not have food. We don't need GMOs to have food. We don't need GMOs to fight droughts. We don't need them. Actually, what they are doing is going to cause more droughts, and it is going to cause more hunger for people. If we tell you now, you asked me a question, why is the push for this? It is greed and money, to put it plainly. Someone sits in a laboratory from the US, for example, or Europe, and this is country X, and they know it makes a lot of money, by the way. If you look at the fighting, the struggle, and this is why we feel African leaders should wake up and be very careful before they just say, bring GMOs. If you go to India, for example, there has been a lot of fighting. If you go and read about BT Banjul is eggplant. You see in India they eat a lot of eggplants. So those guys, the Monsantos, came up with that genetically modified eggplant. They introduced it, and because it is open pollinated, it contaminated all the varieties that they have. Just imagine something that maybe Agnes did not talk about. The moment you have that GMO, it has that bad effect of contaminating even the indigenous or gardens. And you see, in law, the Supreme Court in Canada and US and Brazil, and they have now decided that a plant holding a gene that is a GMO is also protected. So you must pay royalties to a person who invented it. Now you see why they are pushing it. So they have a lot of power, they have a lot of money, they have a lot of influence, because food is political. If people haven't yet known, Food is political. Yes, it is economical, it's economic, it's social, it's everything, but it is political. So the power dynamics come in. You'll see the embassies coming up, like in India, when they were fighting the BT cotton over the prices, and in China it was like $20, in India it was $75 from Monsanto, and they were taking over the entire market in India. So they started fighting back the farmers, the smallholder farmers, and the US embassy had to come in to protect Monsanto because it is coming from their country. So you see the power dynamics coming in, the politics coming in. But maybe before I put you into that, Ugandans and Africans need to understand that the moment these people in engineering these GMOs, it starts with what we have. Have you heard about what they call biopiracy? So someone comes, you have your indigenous maize. There is that maize which we grew up eating. My grandmother used to call it double color. That maize which has many colors. So if they bring their GMO maize and maybe you plant it here. In Africa we have open fields. And now you have a garden here, your neighbor has a garden here. So if someone X, I don't even want to say my sister has a GMO. I just someone X has a GMO here. They grow their maize. The moment they can cross, because it is open pollination. So in law, what they have now decided, the moment this garden contaminates yours, and you have the gene, the genetic gene that was manufactured by that company, then you must pay royalties to that person. Do you see how evil this particular thing is? It is evil. I don't know how they even sleep, because you've contaminated my garden. You used maize that we have to introduce a gene. You are not even paying our great grandfathers or mothers who over centuries have been breeding this particular variety, which you are now introducing a gene.
Another farmer for it.
And now you want to charge me, a farmer who has been consistently, diligently, breeding this variety, saving, sharing with my neighbors. You have contaminated it. You don't want to pay for that contamination. You instead want me to pay you. And it has happened elsewhere. Have you heard about David versus Goliath case in Canada? The same scenario happened. The guy went to court and said, you can't charge me royalties over my own garden. You contaminated it. You should be paying me. They said no. They went to the first court of appeal, up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, no. If there is this GMO into your garden, then that particular garden is also under patent. So you must pay. So when you look at the regime, the legal regime of intellectual property, how it has happened from the 1998 Uruguay, discussions, the World Trade discussions, you see that big powers have been pushing, countries in the global south to just accept. Now we went into TRIPS, the trade-related aspects of intellectual property, and they said, okay, wait, let us have a section that plant varieties will not be protected under patent. What is happening right now? Many countries have been forced to have a patent law, a plant variety law. There is a seed law. They are all looking at commercial ventures. Now, the moment we allow GMOs to come, our seed is going to go. We are not going to have indigenous seeds anymore. That is number one. Then number two, our land might also go. Because if someone takes control of the seed and you can't buy it to plant into your field, you will sell it. They will take it away from you. Number three, we are heading to food insecurity, because whoever owns the seed owns the food. If we cannot afford the food because we can't afford the seed, we will not have seed security. Number four, we are going to be malnourished. We are talking about malnutrition here and there, but that is going to happen. And as I conclude on this issue, people should ponder about the COVID-19 and how it affected countries that are eating GMOs. Some leaders are saying people are eating GMOs in UK and everywhere. You saw that when the world was attacked by COVID-19, how it happened. Some of those guys even thought that Africans are going to die like cockroaches. In fact, that was their prophecy. We did not die. Why didn't we die? It is because maybe we still have some little sanity. We are eating from our gardens, we are eating from... But these guys want to pump us with these synthetic chemicals, with all these genetically modified plants, and our health is going to be in total danger.
Actually, on that, I remember reading an article where it stated that 4 companies in the world own 60% of the seeds, genetically modified seeds in the world. So that really shows the global scale as far as it being a commercial venture. But furthermore, on other effects of this genetically modified food, especially when it comes to health and when it comes to the environment.
Thank you, and thank you, David. Just to let people know that some of us have been on this front, fighting back and pushing back this whole technology and capture and control of our food system, I think now for over 10 years. But consistently, I remember on the 15th day of February, what a coincidence. It's about that time.
Yes.
The 15th day of February 2023, when the GMO law was reintroduced into the Parliament of Uganda. More often than not, I want people to understand the dynamics and they really get to understand why are we pushing back, such that they can push back. Like you have said, people need our food system. People count every mouth as a market. And way back in 1962, one of these multinational giants had their vision statement as no food shall be eaten that we do not own. No food in the world shall be eaten that we do not own. And to a lay Ugandan, you know, it is the people of Uganda that I understand best. We are very interesting people. This is how people started owning our lake, and nobody thought that somebody can own the lake. Then we saw another one coming, wanting to own our coffee, and people are saying, is he going to be the owner of my coffee tree in my garden? Ugandans, we don't first comprehend these things. So, way back in 1962, when Uganda was just getting independence, somebody had set up a company, and that company's vision is to own every food that is going to be eaten in the world. Do you know how much money that one is? And by the way, don't think that they are going to own their katogo. That they are going to have a global saucepan where they are going to be cooking and all of us lying there. It is what David has been labeling to explain, that you only have to control the core production factor, which is seed, for both crop and animal. And then you sit back and relax. Who knew that we are going to take taxis here, or borders here, but we are paying to a US company, somebody seated in a rolling chair down in New York, something called Uber. It is happening here. So this is what we are talking about. Every mouth that woke up, including the 3 of us talking here, somebody is looking at it as a market and must less strategies to control it. And if somebody is controlling your food, when that person asks you to jump, you don't ask why, you ask how high, and you just go up in the sky. That's number 1. Therefore, I do not want the conversation on GMOs to be scientific in principle. The science in the discussion of GMO is the least. I want people to appreciate the economics, the politics, and the security, the human security. Because every person, our biggest share of our income is spent on what we are eating. Forget those that are in the village, that those ones, they don't buy food, they just produce it. My dear, convert that food and their energy of producing it into money. Actually, those in the village are actually spending 100% and so of their efforts on what they are eating. And imagine if we are eating, but we are eating at somebody's cost. Okay? That's one. Number two, David has talked about it. In war, people who have been in war, and I want the UPDF to remain very interested in this issue. In war, you control two issues of your enemy, two aspects of your enemy. Control the food supply and control the medical supply, and you win the war. So, we might not have another stupid war in the near future after the Ukraine. I call it stupid. How could human beings in the 21st century fight like village pigs? That's a stupid war. We might not, and I was not expecting that in our era, we are going to see another stupid law of that nature. The next war against humanity is going to be a biological war. It's going to be a biological war. Just do a small contamination of a consignment or a seed, and you let that seed go into the entire world. If we thought that COVID is spread, we are just joking. GMO, where it is heading, it is not heading. Nobody is concerned that you were hungry. Somebody you never had. Somebody you malnourished. No. Actually, you being hungry and malnourished is a green opportunity for people to advance their agendas. So don't think that somebody who is not your government, who is not your parent, is concerned that you're hungry. Your hunger is a great opportunity for him to make a lot of money. There is nothing like food aid. People think food aid is free. Food aid has never been free. It is actually more expensive than the food you ate. And somebody is controlling the menu based on what the supplies they have. I was talking about the issues of biosecurity. And I'm inviting everybody who is interested in the security and the sustainability and the protection of our sovereign states and our lives to keep keen interest about the advancement of genetic engineering. I have told you, if you could only manipulate, and these people do not care the time it will take, whether it will be 30 years or what, they don't care. But even the Baganda say that akasuko mumiro, if you slow something deep inside your stomach, period. So the biosecurity issues of genetically engineering, the sovereignty, I have told you, in a war, cut off the food supply. Not even President Museveni will be safe. I'm telling you. If the food system gets out of our control and some other person is controlling it, he's going to say, I need the oil wells to give you food. You will have to give. I need all the tropical rainforests. You will give. I don't need you in that chair. I need this one. You will go. Because the next thing, everybody is going to starve and you will all gone. The other issue, the politics of it, who is controlling nature? People tell us that GMOs yield, which is true, because they have manipulated some of them to yield. They will yield. At what cost? I have told you, when you enhance this chromosome, the other ones drop down and you have to push in an external support. In India, where the Green Revolution started, they have never revolved. We saw cases of suicide. Why? You take the high yielding seed, you have to take along with it a fertilizer, you have to take along with it a pesticide, you have to take along with it a herbicide. And these ones are all bought by the same manufacturer. What is being put before us is the seed. What they don't tell us are the accompaniments. But this seed is being promoted as a catalyst to sell the complements. So many of these farmers ended up in loans and in debt. And they could not pay the debt. This is what David was just kind to say. You would realize that you can't use your land and sell it. You have to present your land as collateral. Then you get the chemical and whatever you produce and you don't sell. We have lived in this country where maize drops to 50 shillings. The poorly produced maize, like they want to call it, being sold at 50 shillings. And the farmer has to sell a whole bag of maize to buy one bag of soap. This is the real equation of hunger in Uganda. You lose a whole bag of your maize to get one bag of soap. That maize you would have eaten for a week, you have sent it away. The environment, because GMOs are chemical intensive. They are chemical intensive. Dangerous chemicals. Yesterday I heard over the radio an advert, David. Some courageous company in this country advertising a herbicide called glyphosate.
Glyphosate.
The name itself, not even hidden. In careless economies like ours, they even advertise internationally prohibited chemicals. They are openly advertised in the media here. For me, that is the extreme. When you hear of, when you're hearing about the BT maize or this GMO maize, Roundup maize, you plant this maize, they sell with it a chemical called the Roundup. It rounds up everything except this maize. Now tell me about the birds. Tell me about
what
the
do you
snakes.
mean by rounding up everything?
It rounds.
It
burns.
destroys.
It burns everything except its relative. Very selfish. You introduce a crop that has to live alone. And then the next day you come and tell people you need a balanced diet. When the garden itself was not balanced. Therefore, we Africans, more often than not, we lead the dances without learning the tunes. It was very, very unfortunate that His Excellency, the President of Kenya, started by declaring that if there are so many other things that kill the people of Kenya, let me add an additional one. It is good to lead Africans. Bruno, it is very good to lead Africans.
And easy.
Good. Because you openly come out and say, if you're dying of so many things, let me add an extra one, and the next day you reign in power.
Today is really fiery because we are talking about an issue that, well, we have so many issues in Uganda. But when it comes to food, when there's no food, there's no life and there's no country. So this is a very big issue that we are talking about when it comes to genetically modified organisms and genetically modified food. So you want to keep on listening to this conversation. All of us, not just farmers, by the way, all of us, because we all eat food and we need to be aware of what is coming our way in terms of a storm and fight back, which is what some Ugandans are doing, especially in the East African Court of Justice, because they have filed a petition following Kenya's decision, Kenya's government decision to allow the open cultivation and importation of GMOs into Kenya. And we have raised our eyebrows as Ugandans, saying, what is Kenya doing? And we are trying to keep each other as neighbors accountable. So what risk does this have for a country like Uganda? And why is it important that, I don't know if we'll be able to change the mind of Kenya, but why is it important that we take this petition forward, but also that here in Uganda we also continue to raise the fire in terms of fighting GMOs?
Thank you, Bruno. We were pushed against the wall and nothing was left for us but going to the East African Court of Justice for obvious reasons. Today, if you wanted to go to Kenya, if you went in the morning, you'd already be back. And if Ugandans are keen, you see, Agnes has been talking about us as Africans generally, but Uganda in particular, because let me talk about Uganda. I know Uganda best. We sometimes do not care to read between the lines. If you went to the market today, you look at the companies that are selling to us seeds. And with no fear, the national Kenya Seed Company is a leading seed company in Uganda. Similar Seeds is not a Ugandan company. And you know we are into East African community. In East African community, we have freedom of trade, freedom of movement, freedom. I can establish a business anywhere. I can trade with anyone in East Africa. The moment you open up your gates in Kenya and you allow open importation and cultivation of GMOs, the same will be in Uganda. How on earth would President Ruto wake up in his own makeup and say, for us, we are opening up for GMOs without even having a consensus at summit level? This is something that is concerning all of us as East Africans, and the organ as the summit where all the presidents sit should ought to have sat and agree. In Uganda, we have a law that has been twice rejected by the president, and I want to be on camera to thank him. I think I have never been on camera and particularly thank President Museveni. But you see, he stood his ground, and although the parliament pushed it, and of course we know why they were pushing it, the president said no. They pushed it again, the president said no. We have Tanzania, we have other East African countries are saying no. Now why are you saying that you are opening up? Are you trying to suffocate us? Are you getting out of the East African community? Do you want to suggest that you don't know, you as Kenya, your legal obligations under the treaty? So we went into the East African Court of Justice to challenge the contravention and inconsistency towards the treaty that comes up with the GMO. And the reasons are simple. When you look at the treaty calls upon the partner states, including Kenya, to promote indigenous seeds, to promote nutrition, to promote indigenous knowledge, to promote natural resources, biodiversity, and participation of everyone. But just imagine that by a cabinet memo, you cause us all this. You say GMOs, another thing that maybe we've not discussed. GMOs are leading us into slavery. We are going to be slaves to these companies that are bringing these GMOs here. We don't own the science. We do not own, no. You see, let me tell you, Bruno, some people are confronting us and it's like, but you, David, you appear on TV, you are speaking in the studio and everyone can be able to watch you and hear you. This is technology. You can't fight technology. And we are telling them, wait a minute. everything must be understood in its context. Something that is coming into my life to take away everything that I have, it should be fought. At least we will fight till when we go to the ground, but we have fought this battle. Under the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, Article 21 is very clear. All African states are under legal obligation to refuse and resist anything that conscripts the peoples in Africa into slavery. Economic slavery particularly is provided for. And particularly they talk about monopolies. If anyone is coming up and introducing a trade that is causing a pure monopoly
Of our food system.
and of our core existence, which is food, then that should be resisted, must be fought. And as I conclude on this issue, all African leaders, of course my president, for me, I'm very happy with him. He said no to GMOs, and he stood his ground. I want to ask other leaders, at least in East Africa, to stand their ground, because it is a security issue. We are talking about sovereignty, the security of people. You understand? The moment you allow GMOs, someone is introducing something into your country and you have no control about it. These companies are giants and they are strong. It is better that you keep them at bay. Don't allow them to come and have control, influence and everything. Because the moment you allow them in, you will not have the power to kick them out.
Now, we have spoken about the political, social, and economic aspects, but I also want us to delve a bit into the aspect of health. And the question I have is, does genetically modified food have any nutritional value? And if not, what are the risks, especially health-wise, to the consumers?
Okay, as I come to speak to the health, let me conclude what David was saying. There is a term called food terrorism, and that is why today I have overemphasized the issue of biosecurity, and that you can terrorize the entire country without using an ammunition or a gun of its kind. That's why I was calling the Ukraine war a stupid war. So the next war that we are going to see is going to be a silent war through the issues of bioterrorism, and genetic engineering is such a case. Now to the health. Literature reveals to us that GMOs, like evidently in Canada, are responsible for food allergies. In Canadian schools in certain states, you can walk into the school with a gun and you'll be allowed in, but you cannot be allowed in the school with a nut. A nut like a ground nut, because of the severe allergies. Believe me not, the allergies are equally coming this other side of the world. The genetic manipulation, I have told you, the moment you manipulate and tamper with the genes of a living organism, you have already caused commotion. And when you cause commotion in a living thing, the potential for cancers goes up. But before even we get the cancer directly from the GM, I have told you that GMOs are chemical intensive. And one of the key chemicals that are being sold along these seeds is Roundup, all such other chemicals that have an item called glyphosate. That's why I was telling him when I had almost stopped my car in the middle of the road. These glyphosate chemicals that are used to go along with the GMO crops are cancer causing. They are cancer causing. Glyphosate is carcinogenic. It has that component that causes cancer. So we are seeing the cancers increasing, and the GIT cancers of the throat, of the esophagus, of the intestine, of the colon, of the liver, of the skin. It is as a result of the use of these chemicals that are coming along with these other seeds. So we are already having trouble at the Cancer Institute in Mulago. And we have been told that actually the biggest chunk of the cases are food-based. And now we are opening another gate that everybody is going to be a very good potential candidate. So as we think of opening up for this science and technology that we do not have capacity to manage, GM in the US is not directly eaten by human beings. No. It is for animals, and it is going through a lot of processing. You know what? You know why? It's because you're going to take forever to prove that the health challenges you have are as a result, to trace that they are as a result of that what? Of that GM trait that you consumed. That's why they over-process them. That's why they take them to animals. That's why they, and to the animals through animal feed, and then into aid. You've seen some oils that are being donated as aid. So they go through a lot of processing because they do not want to be held accountable. My mother asked me this question, and I know she's watching this morning, that we have had research since the times of my father, who is my grandfather. Why is it that this particular research requires a law? And she asks very innocent questions. Why is it that for now, this particular one requires a law? And yet our narrows have been doing research, and we knew, Kawanda, what. I have never heard that Kawanda needs a law to make this kind of what? And they have been doing research. My mother is asking. She's a very intelligent woman. And we should ask ourselves, you members of parliament, you should ask ourselves these basic questions. Don't be bogged into science and technology. Why is it that if it is good, we must have a law? For something good? Really? No. People want to use the law, and I'm here with David on the panel. Law traditionally was to prohibit people from committing crime. Law now, the body of Lord David, the law, is used to justify action.
It could be to regulate as well.
No, law is used to justify action. Such that they ask you, why did you do it? And say, I was within the law. And that is why these people are saying, let them guard us with the law first, such that they do all of their stupid stuff. And when we rise up in arms, they are protected by our own law. So, as we leave this table today, don't be fooled about the technology. Don't be told about the science. Don't be confused that you're hungry because there was no GMO. You'll be more hungry actually than you are now. So it is not about that. It is about paying and using our money to pay, and you pay every day, every time we eat. It is about ruling our companies on the strings. It's about controlling our food system. It is about eroding our sovereignty. It is about paving way to bioterrorism, a war that we are not going even to plead to the mighty armies like UPDF to save us from.
Very quickly, Mr. David, what would you like to say as the way forward? What can we do to protect our country and to protect the East African community from the fight, from the war, like she has explained, coming in from GMOs?
First of all, we have everything in our hands. Stop the madness. It is madness. Stop GMOs. Let them stay wherever they are. I know people already are having research projects, and scientists are strong on GMOs because of those research projects, but we do not have GMOs. Other people are saying, we don't. That is this.
And if you come across one, that's illegal.
It is illegal.
Be arrested.
The moment you see a GMO, we need to even give people whistles. We don't need GMOs here because we must never be colonized in our food system. We need to decolonize. In spaces where we have had a few of them come in, we need to decolonize. We shouldn't allow the space. We want to speak to the leaders. We want to speak to the judges. Kindly understand what we are talking about. You are also like us. You have families. We shouldn't introduce, death with our hands into our families. Okay, the law is skewed somehow, but we can also use it to back off, because the treaty is clear. This is what we must promote. We must promote East Africans, we must promote indigenous knowledge, we must promote our indigenous seeds and everything. So we must not allow GMOs onto the land in East Africa.
Indeed, very, very, very important that we all take part in this fight, so that we can give muscle to those who are leading this fight, like my guests today, who are really, really taking this fight against GMOs. It's important for us to understand this issue, and then now we know what to do. We know where to put our eyes into to ensure that GMOs don't come into this country, because like you said, it's an issue of food security, it's an issue of colonialism, it's an issue of food terrorism. So our eyes are now open. Let us do the right thing and take this fight against GMOs to the next level. Thank you so much, our guests, for giving us that wonderful advice and for tackling this issue. Thank you so much, our viewers, for joining this discussion. I know we have learned so much, and there's so much more that we can learn and do together as a family. This is it from us. Ciao. God richly bless you, and enjoy the rest of the programming on Church of Uganda Family TV.